in my generation, if you had dyslexia, yeah, it sucks to be you. And just, work harder. You had no support at all and no sympathy. And then somewhere in the 80s, you had only sympathy and coddling and no real support. Your coddling was mistaken as support, and you're wonderful, and dyslexia is your superpower. And now you have a dysfunctional human being. And now there are actually mechanisms, because again, it gets back to the human existence. We live in the flow, and dyslexia is a brain flow problem. And because as you're reading the words, it's kind of like that AI match. As you're reading the words, the neural net comes and says, this is the word, and this is the letters, this is how it's spelled. Well, if that flow is miswired, you have dyslexia. And the point of retraining the brain is to put an administrative pause at ahead of the dyslexic point. And so what they do is that you have to copy this text, and the letters you have trouble with, so you have to write those letters in a different color. So you're writing the text in your gray pencil. Oh, I'm coming up on a D, a DP.
So you force the conscious attention on the thing
right.
that needs to
and
be.
So the interruption causes the admin to come in. You write it the correct way. It rewires the flow path. You put the pencil bound, you go back into flow. So the more you do that, the less you need, once you've corrected the flow, you no longer have dyslexia. So you don't need to coddle them, and you don't need to send them home to just deal with it.
Well, that's
right?
life, though, I mean, not to so let me say it differently. It maybe isn't life. When I spent a lot of time in the restaurant industry, and the majority of what I was doing was training people, it was all about being within reality with them. And it starts with, well, what was the intended outcome and what was the outcome? And having that conversation. And depending on what relationship the individual has with achievement and their level of emotional intelligence, they would either be more or less likely to take feedback, which would create a more or less uncomfortable interaction. Sometimes people would be like, I can't wait to learn. Yeah, let's go. And sometimes people would take it as a, defensive thing. But it all comes down to, can you get the individual to put conscious attention on what they're supposed to be doing? And I'm hearing you describe these things with reading, which when I hear the words jumping, it makes me think the eyes were probably moving around and there was some kind of focus issue on the eyes, and with dyslexia being in flow, they say that people generally are able to read words with just the first and the last word and the context clues. So there's probably some kind of relationship to high level intelligence, speed, and then not getting that detail that was necessary. And then what you're describing is taking that focus and putting it on it. I mean, I think about people that made shitty pizzas because they were going too fast. It's just like writing a word misspelled. It's like, yeah, you know how to make it a circle, but you don't know how to make it a pizza. And it's just interesting. It all seems to, I don't want to say all because I'm going to get somebody telling me how this and that, but it often seems to point to where you put your attention and what you choose to work on and grow with is what comes. And the reality is, your point was, you don't have to coddle people. You don't have to be hard on people. You just have to help people through it. You have to help people where they don't know where their focus needs to be. The dyslexic folks that you're describing are making that mistake because they don't have the process to slow down and connect it.
Well, right. They don't have any other existence.
Right.
They're not aware of any other existence. And like in your pizza example, but this would be right up your alley with triunity. You want the employee in the flow, and you want the flow to be correct. So they can't be in the flow without flowing, and yet they can't correct the flow without stepping out of it, getting the admin function of their brain working, and then going back into it. And so again, so they make the pizza fast, but they're doing it wrong. So you have to find kind of the starting point of them doing it wrong, and say, okay, go to here and then stop.
And you have to make them do it, because they're not going to do it themselves. To your point, they don't understand the break in the loop. And
they have no awareness of the existence of doing the flow correctly.
So when you coddle people, and that's your superpower. Your superpower is making shitty pizzas. Well, it's not your superpower. And when you
just went out of business.
Yeah, right. And when you're brazen with people, where you're not patient enough to show them where the mistake is, now you create enemies. When you can understand this is a human being,
and you don't get the pizza right anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And they hate you. You have to understand what it takes to train and develop people, and it's getting them comfortable enough for them to feel like their conscious attention can be with you, and they trust you enough to direct it.